I'd love to tell you a little bit more about myself. My name is Kahmaria Pingue, and although I live in Canada, I was born in Jamaica, and it was through Jamaica and my parents and their influence, in terms of our, you know, heroes in Jamaica like Marcus Garvey and Bob Marley, that I came to be interested in my African heritage.
Hello and welcome to Obehi Podcast. I'm your host, Obehi Ewanfo, and I strongly believe that everyone has a story to share. Now let's get started into this episode.
And as I grew up here in Canada, I became fascinated with Ghana in particular, and its connection with Jamaica. And after that, I realized that growing up in Canada, that it was how important it was for me to reconnect with my African identity. And so I eventually started dancing, doing storytelling, fashion design, Afrocentric fashion design, and now I have a business with that. Um, I guess it's called Mayuba Sankofa because of the Adinkra symbol, Sankofa, returning and getting the knowledge from our ancestors and bringing it forward into the future and into the present.
Everyone has a story to tell. We literally believe that to be true. That each and every one of us, if you were to look at the life that we have lived, you could be, 30 years, 40 years. If you were to take up a book and write about you, nobody can take up the book. It would be too heavy to lift up because you have lived a lot of experiences. And we are not yet talking about the connection that you have to your ancestors, to the millions of years of our evolutionary history, which you are able to tap into through your subconscious. So in each of us, there are huge library of story that we can talk about. So I will start with, so you were born in Jamaica, right?
Yes, in Montego Bay.
Okay. Tell me a bit about your childhood. You were growing up. What do you see around you? What sort of form your identity as you are growing up in Jamaica?
hmm Well, I left Jamaica quite young. I left Jamaica and started school in Canada. So I was 5 years old when I left Jamaica. But it's very interesting that I still have some sense memories about Jamaica. When I came to Canada, there were certain things that my family would bring, into our home, into the culture of our home that shaped me, right? So, all of the things that Jamaican parents believe in and value, they instilled in me, including music, including the types of cultural foods that we eat, including spirituality, all of those things. So, although I don't, because I left as a child, I don't remember much about Jamaica, the physical Jamaica. I do have the spiritual, kind of sense memory instilled in me. So, in terms of that, I would say that, the sights and sounds may not be specific, but I do remember the tastes. I do remember the smells, like the smell of the sea. I don't remember where I was at the time, but I think oh, I remember. I went to Vancouver, which is the far west coast of Canada, which is close to the sea. And I remember walking on the beach and smelling the ocean and just getting that, instant, taken back to my childhood and the smell of the sea. And I remember when I was in Montego Bay, we didn't live very far from the sea and we used to go swimming. And so, it's very interesting how sights and sounds and smells even can bring you back to a place of home. And I remember feeling very much, surprised that this part of me, meant so much, just the smell of the ocean.
All
Yeah.
right, that's great. Smell of the ocean. I remember a couple of weeks ago, I interviewed the world leader of voodoo, which is in Benin. Then at the point we're talking about water, we're talking about ocean. I was like sort of asking him, what is the connection between voodoo religion and the ocean? Of course, a lot of beautiful things actually came out from there. So now you are talking of you going out very close to the ocean, and you are having a sense of connection, and of course taking you back to your root. And of course, this will not even be difficult for people to understand if we were to think a bit, no? Because up to 70% of our body is comprised of water, and water is from the ocean. That is where it naturally stays, no?
Mhm.
So there are a lot of things that are in us that sort of give a call back to where we are coming from. And for the fact that sort of take you back to Jamaica, where your root are, that is really very important now and deep in itself. Um, but I have a lot of curiosity whenever I'm talking to African diaspora. I feel there is this connection, there is this urgency to connect among ourselves. It is important. In Jamaica, when you, I don't know how much it was important there to talk about Africa, because now it's like a kind of you are in Canada, you are talking about your root, which is Jamaica. Then from Jamaica, we're going to talk about the root of Jamaica itself, which is Africa. So you see now, it's sort of it's going around and all around again. And of course, you managed to make the connection to Ghana, and where the name Sakofa actually is coming from. We sort of have a lot of meaning to what you are doing. I found all of it to make sense, to be very important. But let me go back to the question again before I get missing on it. How relevant was it to talk about African roots while you are in Jamaica?
Well, you know, like I said, I was quite young while I was there, but my family has been back to visit several times. And I noticed that um, some of our leaders, entertainers like Peter Tosh, Bob Marley, Marcus Garvey, just to name a few, there's very many, they realized that there was a connection with Africa. Even in Jamaica, there's a place called Akampong, and it is in the mountains in Montego Bay, and where a lot of Ashanti people settled. And they say one of our leaders, Queen Nanny, came to visit her loyal subjects because a lot of Africans came to Jamaica and they were, living there. It was the transatlantic slave trade that brought them there, and she came to see her people, and that ignited a revolution. Because she realized that her people were enslaved, and she helped them to fight against the British and the Spanish. So that place still exists because they made demands on the British government, and they created their own society, their own community. In fact, it's a protected place. Not everybody can go there without permission. So that stands alone as a beacon of of ancestry that is in Jamaica that we're very proud of. The fact that not only did they defeat the British and the Spaniards, but they preserved their culture, and it's still there today, and they have their own government. They're a very proud, self-sustained people. So whenever I go back to Jamaica, it's I'm noticing more and more that we're reconnecting with our roots because of those leaders, and because of the Moors and the Ashantis, and and how connected they are to their roots. So in terms of significance, I would say that it's very significant. There used to be a time when, that we didn't know how we came to start speaking the language Patois. It's a dialect, it's a cultural dialect. But then universities started researching, what is it made out of? The grammar is actually comes from, West Africa. there's a mixture of different African words, in patois. Like, for instance, the word nyam comes from a Swahili word that means meat. So it's kind of like, you know, to deny Africa would be to deny who you are, because everything that we are, our language, our food, some of the foods that we eat are identical to foods in Ghana. Identical. Like, they might have different names, but they're identical. So it's kind of like there's a little bit of erasure there because, being colonized, it seems like that part, there's a little bit of disconnect. And then, schools would teach, quote unquote, the Queen's English. But eventually it comes back, just like you said, it's kind of like a full circle. It comes back and you realize how connected we are. Our language, our food, our dress, our music. Reggae, for instance, comes from Minto. Minto comes from West Africa, Minto music. So all of it is connected to Africa. It's just a matter of you knowing that it's connected. I'll tell you one funny story actually before we move on. The last time that I went to Jamaica, I went as an adult, and my mom brought me to a kind of a shop, a market area, and there was several different buildings in this kind of a market square. And she grew up going to this market for, to shop, etc., with her family. And there was a building with Adinkra symbols in the on the side, kind of on the roof, kind of like this. And there was Adinkra symbols on there. And that was something that I was very passionate about when I was in high school. And I used to start researching about Adinkra symbols. And I would always tell my mom about Adinkra symbols, and their meaning and their proverbs and the wisdom that comes from Adinkra symbols from Ghana. And she grew up going to this shop, not knowing that these writings that were on this building were Adinkra symbols. I went there as an adult and I showed her, Mom, wow, look at this. They have Adinkra symbols. And she was shocked because she grew up not knowing what they were. And I came as an adult, her daughter, and pointed it out to her. And she was amazed, So it's so interesting that a child that she born came back to a place, a village that she grew up going to, and kind of brought back this knowledge to her, and pointed it out to her. So it's just really interesting. It's very much full circle, I would say, and very significant. African heritage is very significant.
You see, like I was saying before, we're talking about memory. There is a project that I'm working on. It's actually about memory. Even though the entire project that I'm working on is about memory, but this specific one is more about how to build our memory. Okay, we can talk about our family as our immediate family, or our extended family, or as a group, as a tribe, as a people. As African in the diaspora, we are hundreds of millions of people. We are sort of lost, that we're not able to trace our origin and able to build on our memory. We believe that our history started from slavery, from colonialism. So we had nothing. We don't owe anything. We never did anything in the human history. This is what we were taught. This is because we lost the memory. And if you don't hold your memory, if you don't know where you are coming from, you are even at a danger to yourself. How can we build on this memory, African in the diaspora and also those at home, so that we can always tap into it to build something for ourselves?
Yes, I agree with you 100%. Without knowledge of our identity, we as a people will perish, because that's the source. When you're not connected to a source, you die out, right? You could think of it even as electronics. After a while, if you don't charge your batteries, if you're not connected, you're gonna die out. That's the source of who we are. I think that in order to connect, we have to weave it in to our everyday life. We can't just do it during February, doing Black History Month. That's what we do here in the West. There's Black History Month, and every February, people suddenly remember that they're Black and that they're African. That's not going to be enough. It's not sustainable. Um, Also, I find that now, I don't know if you notice behind me, there is this kinara. It's a Kwanzaa kinara, and it's a Pan-African holiday that comes after Christmas. And many African Americans have started celebrating it now since the 1960s, and it's becoming more and more popular here in Canada. And it's another way to connect to your roots. However, what I love about it is that the principles, there's 7 days of celebration, and those principles, you can bring it and carry it through the rest of the year. And so it's not just one time of the year that you connect with your heritage, right? But it's a community celebration, and everyone is involved, and that's something that is very important for us as a people, because we come from a collectivist type of society, and so we thrive in community. A lot of Western North American culture is individualistic, and so we tend to separate ourselves, and that's how we as a people, we don't thrive that way. We tend to be disconnected and disoriented when we don't work together as a community. So my answer would be to utilize things like Kwanzaa, to weave it into your everyday life. I would say that use even something simple like the food you eat to connect to your roots. Like, for instance, if you know that you always eat a certain type of yam, find out where it comes from. Where does it originate? Why did they eat it? Was it the climate at that time? Was it out of necessity? Find out, trace it, find out where it comes from. If you eat we eat something called chocho. I found out that chocho comes from so many different, countries in the Central America as well. So you start to realize how we traveled through different decades. If it originated here, how did it end up there? How did it end up on your plate? If you just take the time to just kind of think, okay, well, that means my ancestors traveled. They weren't stationary. They were nomads. They explored. There wasn't just one explorer. We always think of, one type of, colonialistic type of explorer. Our people explored long before slavery. So this is something that I would recommend if you're looking to connect, because if we make it like homework, we're not going to do it. We make it natural and organic and create discussions with our families, then it becomes fun, it becomes intriguing, right? So for me, I think that that's the best way to connect with your roots, is just be curious.
Thank you for that. That is important.
Mhm.
Now, let's look at it also more realistically in terms of what we can benefit from it as a people. You have two businesses,
Mhm.
and business in the 21st century is nothing more than service. You render a service to the people. That is how they are going to pay you. By connecting among ourselves, like I said before, I alluded to, we are hundreds of millions of people. Okay, that is data, but that is also real. These people are really here. So, what do we need to benefit as Africans in the diaspora, being able to connect among ourselves? In Brazil, African diaspora are more than 100 million people. The United States, UK, Canada, where you are, the community is growing up in some part of Europe, Italy, Germany, France, in Australia, in Russia, in Ireland. There is nowhere you don't find people of African descent. But can we find something that sort of unite us together so that when we do businesses, we connect ourselves, we put ourselves first before any other people?
Mhm.
Because I'm not like trying to sound sadics to somebody now. Because come to think of it, that is what the Europeans do too. The French put themselves first. The
Mhm.
Russians put themselves first. It doesn't mean that you are going there to be fighting other people, but you remember there is an interest that is common to you,
Mhm.
that this is what you have to do for you to survive.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, by connecting among these hundreds of millions of people of African descent, what do we have to benefit, even from the point of view of
Mhm. Absolutely. Pan-Africanism is the answer to that. Pan-Africanism is a philosophy that says that we are all from the same nation. It's kind of like being from the same country, even though we're not. We're from of the same family. So I would say national Pan-Africanism and kinship is the answer to that. If we're brothers and sisters, then you're more inclined to reconnect with a brother or sister, a family member, than a stranger, outside of that circle, right? So if you put family first, this is something that I teach my own children, is family first, right? So that means that whatever sacrifice you're going to make is for your family. Whatever investment you're going to make is for your family. And business is an investment. So therefore, if I put my family first, then the first place that I need to invest is in a Black owned business. So seek out, make that sacrifice. If I have to drive maybe, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, a little bit longer to get what I need from a Black owned business, then that's a sacrifice that I make for my family in order for my family to advance and to grow, right? So I would say that's one, definitely. The other thing I would recommend is understanding that Pan Africanism is something that helps us with our identity, right? So I guess you would be more inclined to learn about your family members, right? So I think for me, um, if there's a little bit of disconnect with people that you don't know. So if you make it a point to get to know the other people who are in your family, then there's more of a connection, right? So if you have your brothers and sisters in Brazil, if you have brothers and sisters in Mexico, there's a lot of Mexicans now who are finally claiming their African heritage, which is beautiful to see. Get to know who, what, how many times people have asked me, because I've lived in different parts of Canada. There's a province of Saskatchewan. I used to live there before I came to this particular province. And people would ask me, there's Black people there? And I would say, yes, there's a lot of Black people. There's Nigerians, there's Ghanaians, there's Trinidadians, there's Jamaicans, there's tons of Black people in Saskatchewan. In my own country of Canada, people don't realize that they're brothers and sisters in the next province, right? So get to know where your people are. Get to know, like, there's Black people who in Germany who speak German. There's Black people, like, get to know your brothers and sisters, right? That's what Pan-Africanism means, that you are united globally, across the globe, right? Um, and so that means that if I'm going to invest in my family, if I have family in Germany and I want to invest in a business in Germany, I can invest in a business in Italy, right? Because that's where my family is, right? I have family in Jamaica that we want, if they're running a business, we can invest there. That means that we're not divided, we're connected.
Yeah, of course, I'm asking you a few questions relating to this connection and the African diaspora because, of course, as you can see, that is the central piece of our conversation and our communication here in Obehi Podcast and also in our e-learning platform because it is important for us that we take care of ourselves. This is very, very because nobody is coming to do it for us, so we need to look for a way to be able to fix our problem. It is our problem. We are the one that will transform into opportunity for us. Like I just made mention of, the hundreds of millions of Africans in the diaspora cannot be seen as a problem. It's a solution. But we are the one that will transform that number into a resources. And we're going to look for a way to do that.
Yeah.
Because it had not been done yet, so that is where I have a lot of curiosity. What do you think is the impediment that is holding us back from being able to tap into the huge potential that we have as a people, which is the connection, the networking, the doing things together? Like I just said, in Brazil, there are more than 100 million people of African descent. Can those people count on other people like them in the United States? Can they count on other people like them in UK? Can they say, oh, there are other people of African descent in Germany? Can they count of them in terms of trouble and in terms of peace? That these people will come to rejoice with them when it is time to rejoice. These people will come to defend any type of trouble. In case somebody is thinking that I am overstressing the line here, I want them to remember what happened in South Africa. That the reason those few insignificant number of people, of white people in South Africa were able to hold the South African people hostage was because the Europeans supported them.
Yeah.
People from Europe, including those from the United States, supported them, armed them, trained them, gave them everything they needed to hold the people hostage.
Yeah.
So, for the fact that we are a people, we must live up to that in everything. We must be able to protect our interests and uplift our name in the world. So, I come back to the question again. What is stopping us from being able to organize ourselves for the sake of ourselves?
Yes. Well, we're disenfranchised, right? We don't connect with our brothers and sisters who are there. So that's one. Okay. We need to understand that they are our brothers and sisters. When we realize that and connect to that, then everything else will fall into place. For instance, money is power. We know that. Because of our disenfranchisement, it takes some time to rebuild generational wealth, right? So for me, that's one of the reasons why I'm hoping that my businesses will be, successful. What we need to do is build wealth. We need to build generational wealth. The reason why those people in South Africa, the Dutch, etc., were able to amass this control was because they had wealth. They were able to use their dollars to speak for them. It's the same with Asian people. It's the same with South Asian people of Indian descent, right? Because of the wealth that they have, that money speaks for them. It even works. If you're totally honest, a lot of those politicians, they have wealth, they gain wealth, and that wealth is what makes them powerful. So, we need to be conscious of what we're doing with our money. We need to be conscious of where we're spending our money. We need to be conscious of, how we amass our money. So here in Canada, there was this idea that came about that we, as a people in the diaspora would make a contribution once a year into this one bank account, you know, to gain wealth, right? So they chose Emancipation Day, which is August 1st here in Canada. And so I thought it was a wonderful, wonderful idea, but it never really materialized, right? They're still working on it. I hope that they succeed because there's a lack of trust because of the disenfranchisement, right? We are all over the place and not connecting as a nation, right? And so if we imagine what we could do if thousands of people of African descent paid even just $1 into one account every year, the amount of wealth that could be amassed, right? And what we could do with that wealth, right? But because of the lack of trust, where is that money going? Who's going to manage it? What's going to happen with it? What are we going to do with it? Well, yes, some of those details are important. We need to work all those things out. But my point is that money speaks. Money is power. And if we can come together as a people and create that wealth, then we don't have to ask anybody for anything. Here in Canada, we have grants that you can apply for as a business or as a nonprofit organization. And that's fine. But the problem is it's not sustainable. You constantly have to ask. You're always asking, always asking, always asking. And that puts us in a subordinate, position, where we don't have power, right? We're constantly, underneath somebody else's, power. So for me, I think that in order to create power, we need wealth. In order to create wealth, we need to be unified. In order to be unified, we need Pan-Africanism. We need, to understand the meaning of Pan-Africanism and the purpose of Pan-Africanism, which is to unite us as a family, as a nation, and in numbers. Even just if we talk about numbers alone, if we as a people come together in numbers alone.
Yeah, many people do not understand the idea of Pan-Africanism. That is true. It's something that I've asked a number of times here. The other day, I was interviewing Emma. He's now in an advanced age. He was a member of the Nkrumah government, the Nkrumah administration.
Yeah.
Of course, up to the time that the Nkrumah was ousted because he was going to, what is the name of this country? Vietnam, and to mediate between the United States and Vietnam. And of course, the CIA, of course, helped people to get him out of power because that certainly was not in the interest of the United States. It's not the first time that the European and Western power will intervene in Africa to take out somebody who is not working for their interests. We must understand that this is the way it is. It's a game for them.
Mm-hmm.
To this man, I was asking him, because when Nkrumah was removed from power, there was really not much of a protest against the coup plotter. We sort of said a lot about whether the people actually understood what is even meant by Pan-Africanism. Because it was supposed to start from Ghana, because he is the president of Ghana, and by extension, he was going to be able to have influence in many other places if this influence have solidified in Ghana. But if the people of Ghana could not stand up for that idea when it was needed the most, I mean, that idea didn't really go home where. So the question I was asking him, did the people really understand what is meant by Pan-Africanism? So anyway, I'm not going to ask you to be thinking too much on that. That is okay. I just want to say that it's not like it's very simple for people to understand. Many people didn't understand it there until they still didn't understand it well, even though it's a very beautiful idea. We're talking about our liberation, talking about our freedom, talking about our collectivity, talking about our interest.
Mm-hmm.
You see, when we talk about interest like this, talking about us as African in the diaspora, The name that usually come to my mind often, especially when we also talk about organization, our potentials, is Marcus Garvey. Now, Marcus Garvey was a man. Of course, he managed to organize himself and organize people. Now, how could it be possible for a man at that time to have that much power? Because power is nothing more than organizational. He could have a shipping line.
Mhm.
Today, 2022, we are moving to 2023. I don't know of any African institution, organization, or put all the millions of oil put together that have a shipping line. If we want to take flight, in most of the cases, we need to take European flight, take American flight. If we fight a war in Africa, we need to depend on European weapon to fight. Russia AK-47, that is what we use to fight, to kill ourselves. Why can't people in Nigeria, people in Ghana, people in Ivory Coast decide to produce their own weapon and say, now we decide to die. We produce our weapon to die. We are not able to do anything because we have been taught that we are worth nothing. But from among us also came Marcus Garvey, who was able to prove that we can do something. We are somebody. We came from somewhere. We have history, a huge history behind us. This is the data we're talking about before. Because if you lack this, like Marcus Garvey will say, a tree that have no root, or a man that doesn't know his root, is cut off. Okay, this is the question I want to ask you. Do we in 2022 have the possibility of able to connect among ourselves so that we can build for ourselves in the diaspora? Do we have the possibility of doing it?
We do, absolutely. It's just a matter of being united. You have to remember that Marcus Garvey was a leader, but you can't be a leader if people aren't following, right? So a lot of people during that time, they put their money into Marcus Garvey's vision, right? His wives, both of them who happened to be named Amy, they were editors of his newspaper, right? So it's a matter of knowledge, right? So he used that information to educate the people about his vision and educate them about who their enemy is. So we have to believe that we have how we would say, a common enemy, right? If we don't realize who that common enemy is, then we will have people infiltrating, we'll have people spying, we'll have people, not connecting to the vision, will be scattered, right? The reason why Marcus Garvey was successful, in his endeavor was because he had people following that vision, right? I find that we as a people, there's a lack of trust and there's a lack of following one vision, and coming together united for one vision. If we're able to do that, then yes, we can definitely buy an airline. We definitely need our own national defense. We need all of those things to be successful because we realize who the common enemy is, right? We have to realize who that we're at war. A lot of people don't realize that we're at war, but in order to understand that you're at war, you have to realize that the history, right? You have to realize throughout history, this is what happened to your people. This is what happened. How can we come to a solution? We have to be innovative and we have to have a vision about our goal and where we're going. For me, my goal is to use my businesses to make us healthy. So I have a sea moss and moringa infused smoothie business, tropical flavors, there's so much nutrients and vitamins in it. So if we're fighting a war against anyone, you have to be healthy. You have to be strong. You have to have a clear mindset. You have to be sober, right? So this is my way of contributing to my community, is bringing health and wellness to my community, right? And so our ancestors knew about sea moss. My Jamaican ancestors, you know, knew about sea moss and how it was so healthy. But it's interesting that it's now in the mainstream. And also moringa is now in the mainstream. There's tablets, there's powders, there's all kinds of things, products, moringa-based products and sea moss-based products, but our own people are not using it, right? And our own people are not profiting off of it, right? Other people are. So I'm saying bring the profits to our community, bring the wealth and health to our community so that we can be strong and sober-minded in order to fight. The other issue is I'm an educator, I'm a teacher. That is something that I have two different avenues. I can teach in the mainstream and I can teach, privately within my own community, right? And I've chosen to teach within my community. Malcolm X said, never let your enemy educate your children. And there's a reason why he said that, because that's where the brainwashing comes in. That's when we start to disbelieve that we are great, right? So I use my knowledge, to educate children throughout the year, not during Black History Month only. I take time to bring cultural storytelling into my teaching. I take the time to, teach through even the clothing that I wear. So with my Afrocentric designs, you can wear them to the office. You don't have to just wear it on a cultural holiday or when you're going to a cultural function. Be proud of who you are. Express it through the way you walk through the world. Wear what you want to wear. That reflects who you are. I'm wearing this necklace today. It's a South African type of necklace. I love it. It goes with a lot of different things that I wear. I have lots of them, different colors. And in just wearing a hoodie and track pants, I wear this necklace and it's like suddenly I become a queen. I become someone who I can relate to. Like, people ask me so many questions about this necklace, and it makes me realize that there's power in what we wear on the outside, right? So those are just some ideas that I'm just bringing you some exemplars about identity and about knowing who you are as a unified people. That's what Pan-Africanism does for me. It makes me stronger, more powerful, and it directs my thoughts as to what type of business that I want to bring to the world. What am I saying to the world? I'm saying made with Sankofa means made with the knowledge of my ancestors. When you take a drink of the smoothie, you're taking a drink of knowledge that my ancestors brought to this world, to this community.
That can never be overstated. It can never be said enough. So we need to continue to say it. You see, Thomas Sankara was the president of Burkina Faso. Now, this is the idea of Thomas Sankara, that Africans should eat what they produce and produce what they eat.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm making mention of it because in the course of your explanation, you did make mention of the fact that Africans are not even profiting from the material that they have. This is only one. No, we're talking of food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, we can drag that to different angles because it is very irritating and very sad, actually. 1991, that was when the Gulf War was taking place, no?
Mm-hmm.
When the US was bombing countries in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at that time, like what is happening in between Russia and Ukraine today,
Mm-hmm.
you will imagine that other people, where there is no fighting, they will be benefiting from the war. I'm not saying war is good, But people are so stupid that sometimes they keep fighting instead of talking, no? All right.
Mhm.
1991, Gulf War. In
Mhm.
Nigeria, we are one of the top oil producers in the world. We have sold a lot of oil in the time.
Mhm.
Of course, most of the thing that is happening in the country in Nigeria is illegal in most of the cases, though, because we don't do it legally, so we do it illegally because it benefits few people. The rest can go home hungry. It doesn't concern the few the few thieves that are in position of authority. So IBB at the time, which was then the Nigerian head of state, military head of state, was proposed to take money from IMF. Now, this law is very important in the history of Nigeria. That the Nigerian people managed to understand that this law, we didn't need it. Not only that we didn't need it, but we didn't need the condition that IMF was placing
Mhm.
to give this law to Nigeria.
Mhm.
Which are the conditions? One of which was that Nigeria should open up its economy.
Mhm.
All right. There is nothing bad in opening up the economy, but
Mhm.
there is something wrong if that economy have nothing to put in the same economy that is opening up. Because what it simply means is that you are committing a suicide. Because that economy is going to be separated with product coming from every other place. Because now we are suddenly open up the economy, but you have nothing to put it to the say. It's like open up a basket where people can put something and also take from it. But you that own the basket, what are you putting into it other than oil?
Mhm.
That is what the Nigerian people saw. And they said, IBB, do not take the money. So debate were open up. They call it the structural adjustment program. That is what IBB call it actually, because they say that is poverty. So they wanted to eradicate the poverty. They wanted to put the money, they bring money from IMF because they always do this, no? And of course, at the end of the day, the government of Nigeria still went ahead and take the money.
Mhm.
And the consequence of that will last for several years in Nigeria because not only that we are going to have to pay back a debt that was probably shared by few people, the Nigerian naira keep falling. The economy keep overflowing with product coming from all over the places.
Mhm.
Like Thomas Sankara was saying, why should Nigeria, a country in tropical climate, be importing toothpick, for example? Toothpick. We say we don't have job.
Yeah.
Why should we be importing
Yeah.
product from people that are,
Mhm.
are we not supposed to do the calculation?
Yeah. Yeah. We need to take example of Cuba and the self-sufficiency of Cuba. A lot of people say a lot of things about Castro, but he made his country self-sufficient. Everybody there, from educationally, the literacy rate is extremely high. They produce cars, they don't produce cars, but they fix their cars up so that they have cars from the 1950s that still run. They're mechanics. Everybody contributes to that economy, right? So I agree with you. It's the same thing happening in Jamaica right now. Why would you import banana from somewhere else and you live in Jamaica? Jamaica just has banana, but banana chips come from somewhere else. It's really ridiculous when you think about it, right? So, a lot of people, really don't like the fact that our government in Jamaica paid so much for foreign people to come and build our highways, right? And then they brought their own people over to labor to build the highways when we have people in Jamaica who can, we have our own laborers. So it's what you're bringing up is very important. It's about self-sustaining countries. We need to be able to look at our resources, utilize our resources, and protect our resources from external forces, right? And that's something that we're not doing, well enough. We're not taking it seriously. And I agree with you. We would be further ahead if we could utilize the things that we have already instead of importing and exporting some of the things that we export, we need for ourselves, so we're exporting things that at prices that should be more, we should be gaining more wealth from, but we're exporting them at peanuts, so yes, it's very important for us to protect our resources and invest in our own people, and employ our own people. Um, it's extremely important to our advancement as people and the power that we hold.
All right. I think also it's important what you said before, which is about storytelling. That I found it very important. Of course, I wanted to touch about that as we are moving towards the end of the conversation.
Mhm.
Um, how much do you think we should be talking about our story as Africans in the diaspora? Because, of course, our story now help us to understand, help us to clarify some myth, that, okay, a number of times I've interviewed professors of histories in the United States, particularly of African origin, but also of other people. Because what the European did to, okay, by Americans, I am actually referring to the European because we are talking about the same people here. Of course, they understand that they are the same people. And that is why we, African diaspora, we are also the same as Africans in Africa because we know that we are the same people. So in this engagement, Africans are European. That is why I'm just saying European. Okay. So what the European did in the United States and also in Africa is that they told the African diaspora in the United States, in this case, Africans, Americans, that their history started from slavery. And of course, they made sure that they pump this in their head through the educational system, which of course they control. They are very careful of the kind of images they plant in people's head. They made sure that they succeeded in this. So that when you call an average African American to then come to talk about history, except those that have re-educated themselves, they come to look at themselves as if their origin actually started from slavery. But it is wrong. It's wrong.
Yeah.
They did the same thing in Africa through their colonialistic agenda, that there was nothing in Africa before they encounter the Europeans.
Mhm.
Therefore, everything before then is black. And by black, it means nothing is there. And I am not saying that one person just said this one somewhere. A number of European scholars, highly placed in the society in Europe, continue to perpetuate this. They knew that it was wrong, but they continued to say it until they planted in the minds of African people that they don't have history except the one that they were given by the European. And this too is dangerous. They know that it is dangerous and they do it anyway. So this is why I'm trying to connect the two. Now, we, Africans in the diaspora, what is the importance of us talking about our story? Therefore, storytelling in this case, using story to sort of connect us, all of us. Tell me about that.
Mhm. Well, just like music, when you sing a song over and over and over again, what happens? The song becomes embedded in your brain, right? So when you think about the way a commercial jingle, I remember jingles from, TV commercials that I listened to when I was a little girl. For some reason, it just sticks, right? Because it was, repeated over and over again, to the point where it's in your long-term memory, right? We need to do the same thing with our history. We need to first of all educate ourselves about it, and then we need to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it and put it in a format that's palatable for our people. So another reason why that jingle, that commercial sticks in your mind is because it is in a format like poetry or something short and sweet that makes sense, right? So we're dealing with the human mind here. So we can't, dismiss the way our minds work. We have to understand the way our minds work. We need to put that information in a palatable form that will stick with us, that we can digest and understand, right? So if that means that we need to put it to music, if that means that we need to do it in spoken word, if that means that we need to shorten the stories and just use, tell it in a way, just in a natural way. It doesn't have to be in a huge, thick history book. Some people can digest that and some people can't, right? So we need to put it in a way, and I'm speaking as a teacher now. When I teach children, I understand that what works for one student doesn't work for another student, right? So I need to put it in a format that they understand and that they can digest. So I would say it's the same thing with our storytelling. When I teach Anansi stories, every story has a lesson. Every story makes you, it's entertaining, but it also makes you think, right? So it's interesting that we as a people, we are an oral storytelling people. Many of us tell our stories orally. And it's not to say that we didn't write books. We have hundreds of books that are written down, as well. We had libraries, we had universities, right? Ancient libraries, ancient universities with lots of books of knowledge. But I'm also saying that tap into the part of your DNA that loves, poetry, that loves rap music, that loves hip hop, that loves music, and put it in a format that's entertaining and interesting for our people to digest. And I think that it's something that works. So that's kind of what I have to contribute, because I think that we don't have to discredit the fact that we are an oral people. We love to talk. We love to engage because we are a collectivist society. We are a community-based society, right? So what do people in a community do? We talk to one another. My business will flourish by word of mouth. If I do well with my customer service and my products, one person will tell another person, right? It's through word of mouth. That's the best testimonial that I can get. The best kind of feedback is from my clients telling another client something, right? So I think that we need to utilize that more.
How can people connect with you? I want you to use these few seconds to promote your business. How can people reach out to you? Where can they find you and things like that?
Yes, thank you so much. Made with Sankofa is on Instagram at Made with Sankofa. And we're also on Facebook. You can find our Facebook page as well at Made with Sankofa. Onyx Stasia, African Diaspora Productions. You can see some of my designs and what I do on Instagram as well at Queen Kahmaria, KWEEN KAHMARIA.
What would be your final thoughts here, considering what we have talked about today? Of course, it's not the last conversation that we are going to have, but for today, this is where we are going to cut it. You tell me, what would be your final thought, the conclusion? It might be a message or anything you want to add to conclude the conversation. Please go ahead and do that.
My last thought would be that my two businesses, the focus is restoration. Being in the diaspora, we go through life, we go through our journey, and we tend to pick up negative things along the way. So for me, restoration is very important. So restoration in mind, body, and spirit. So whether that be through your body, the clothing you wear, whether that be your mind through education, or whether that be your spirit, your wellness through your nutrition, restoration is the key. Restoration back to greatness, into greatness, for greatness is kind of how I live my life, is kind of how it's the focus of my businesses. So restoration, think about what have I lost and what do I have to gain by going back and fetching it. That's what Sankofa is to me: returning and fetching, restoring.
I know that maybe probably on another episode we're going to talk about your journey in Africa, how you manage to reconnect. That is an important conversation, but that is going to be for another day. Thank you so much, Kahmaria. It's really has been a pleasure here to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for inviting me on. Thank you.
If you enjoy this podcast, make sure you subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Obehi Podcast and share with your friends who might need it. I remain Obehi Ewafo. Thank you so much for listening, and talk to you in the next episode.